So Eric Charleston is a partner at Borden Ladner Gervais. He regularly represents insurers on some of Canada's largest cyber claims. And Dan Michaluk, who is also a partner at BLG, he has represented clients in significant privacy, security, and freedom of information litigation, including at the Ontario Court of Appeal and Supreme Court of Canada. In addition to their work with cyber claims, breach coaching after a cyber attack, both Eric and Daniel also work with organizations to help them build and strengthen their cyber incident response plans. And they will be sharing their knowledge and expertise during this session on what goes into building a strong incident response plan and steps to prepare your organization for that. We will be putting in the chat a link to an article that was written on the subject. So please check that out as well. So thank you both for being here and getting comfortable. And let's get started with some questions for you. I'm going to start with you, Eric. We know that you say for cyber incident response planning, the power is in the process. Can you share with our subscribers what exactly you mean by that?
Thanks, Marnie. And I want to echo earlier what Philip said, that Marnie really is available all the time. And we have questions about these incidents sometimes very late and very early, and she is always immediately responding. So it's really admirable, the attention that she pays to the subscribers. When we say the power is in the process, I think the best place to start is with a quick anecdote. I once had a client ask me, what's the big deal about an incident response plan and writing one? He asked me, can I just download a template from the internet? And isn't this sort of more of an IT thing? And I told this client that you can do these things. You can delegate the creation of the plan to IT, and you can fill in the blanks on a template, and you can then check a box. You've got an IRP, but you will not have actually prepared for a cyber incident, and you will have not created a usable plan and given your incident response team ownership of the response process, which is critical when the real thing happens. The power's in the process, Marnie, because the document itself isn't worth much unless you use the right process to formulate it. It's less about the final document. Dan and I are constantly telling clients, it's less about that piece of paper, and it's much, much more about the discussions and critical thinking that you engage in while creating the plan. It's about the journey in creating the plan and about the team that makes it. It's about the knowledge gained and accountabilities assigned as part of that process. And if an organization that's listening now already has an IRP, but it sounds more like the off-the-shelf variety I was alluding to earlier, it may make sense to involve outside counsel, and we'll talk about how that process works a little bit later in our conversation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I think to add to that, incident response plan itself will sit on a shelf, hopefully for a long time, before you actually have to respond to it. So I think the process is a really important part of being ready when it happens, because the threat actors don't give you a whole lot of advance notice that they're going to do it. So Dan, I have a question for you. Can you give our subscribers the top 5 most important components in a cyber incident response plan from your perspective?
Yeah.
And what do you find is sometimes missing?
Yeah, I'll give you 5. And try to explain each briefly. First of all, the plan should stipulate who has the authority to contain in no uncertain terms. I think we heard Kathy talk about that critical decision earlier and how difficult that was to make. That needs to rest with one person in the organization who has a duty to delegate it when they are not available. And if you're really good, you've got a plan that will insulate that person from getting it wrong, right? You want that person not to be afraid of the consequences of getting it wrong. Obviously to make an informed and intelligent decision, but also not be afraid. That's number 1. 2, spend some time mapping out the protocol for engaging with your experts. It starts with what we like to call a kickoff call. After your containment steps are taken, the next step is the kickoff call typically. And you really ought to involve all of your experts, so technical and legal together. Don't leave legal out. Of course, if legal's not available, and we will normally be available, you can go ahead without legal. But in the normal course, and I think you should plan for it, legal should be there right from the start, so privilege can be put in place, and you can have advice right from the start because the pressure's on right from the start. So that's 2. That kind of engagement protocol, let's call it. 3, have a protocol for reporting to the executive team and the board. talk about that, map that out. What we're finding in most hospitals is that there is an emergency management operation team or center that sits separate from the incident response team with all of the executives on that team. There needs to be kind of a plan for communicating from the incident response team over to that executive team. That communication is so critical, and it is a failure point, frankly, if the executives are making decisions based on poor communication. So think about that. We think that communication should involve legal counsel, actually, so it's privileged. Another consideration. And then you do the same sort of mapping for the communications up to the board, usually to the chair first, as a heads up, and then usually a full session of the board once the dust has settled. You can put those words in your plan if you want to be folksy about it. And then on a regular cadence, kind of like a monthly cadence or 3 weeks. And again, we think that that communication should involve counsel, so it's all privileged and safe. That's 3. 4 and 5, I'll collapse for you, Marnie. 2 appendices that can be helpful. One is a stakeholder map, would be nice, so you've got it kind of all laid out, and you're not going to miss any stakeholders when you're thinking about managing all the people who are in your world. And 5 is a document that sets out services to prioritize. So what comes back first and what's interdependent with what. This was a key learning from the Ireland healthcare attack. You can read the big report, and it talks a lot about the importance of prioritization. And that's the 5.
Excellent. Thank you very much.